The first tip for getting amazing compositions when you do landscape photography is to look for geometrical shapes. Compositions that incorporate lines, circles, triangles, stars, repeating patterns have an immediate aesthetic appeal. These elements bring a sense of order and structure to the often chaotic natural world, making your photo more pleasing and easier for the eye to navigate. From the curve of a river or road to the straight lines in a field and all sorts of repeating patterns, these shapes are what create visual harmony and visual flow. They draw attention because they're recognizable, which helps create interest, like in this example with the deer or this example with the tractor tracks. Especially curves create visual flow, guiding the viewer's eye through the scene or towards a subject, but be careful they don't guide the eye out of the frame. The second tip is to get low, low, low. By shooting from a low perspective, you can transform foreground elements, making them larger and more impactful, which draws the viewer's eye deep into the scene. This perspective emphasizes texture and distorts the perception of scale, giving even the smallest elements, like a beautiful pattern of sand or small bubbles caught in ice, monumental presence. Furthermore, photographing with a wide-angle lens really emphasizes the sense of three-dimensionality and thereby depth. You may need to focus stack such a photo to get everything in focus. And the third tip is to go in the completely opposite direction and get high. Find an elevated position, whether it's climbing a hill, climbing a mountain, or using a drone. Shooting from above offers a broader view and reveals the overall lay of the land, which is invisible from ground level. When looking down on a landscape, it reveals the patterns, curves, and shapes and helps in organizing complex scenes and highlights the relationship between different landscape features. Besides the shapes and patterns, I can also highly recommend trying to photograph during a foggy morning with a fog inversion where individual elements like hills, buildings, mountains, and trees get isolated from the busy surroundings. Not to mention, a fog inversion just creates the most magical atmosphere. I have recently made a major update to my ebooks on composition and landscape photography, where I added both new pages, but the big thing is I've added extended EXIF data to all the photos like I have in my ebook on light and landscape photography. This streamlines the ebooks, and I even for the first time ever offer a small discount if you get the bundle. So if you hesitated to get the ebooks because of a lack of EXIF data, but you want to learn about composition and landscape photography, and light for that matter, in an easy to understand and straight to the point way, now is your chance. The text is minimal and there are tons of examples, so if this video isn't enough about composition and landscape photography, be sure to get my ebooks to learn even more. There is a link down in the description of the video. So tip number 4 is to crop the top, as I call it. Don't always feel the need to include an entire subject like the full height of a mountain or the entire drop of a waterfall. By leaving out the very top or just include part of a massive subject, you lead the viewer to imagine the rest, often creating a perception that the subject is larger, taller, and more immense than if you had captured it all. This technique adds drama and mystery to your scene. One of my favorite examples is this, where I left out the right side of the waterfall so you do not know how far it extends to the right. And as you can see, it gives a sense that it is way bigger than it really is. And tip number 5, keep an eye on overlapping elements. Proper separation is crucial for a clean composition. You need to make sure that your important subjects aren't merging with the background or other elements in a distracting way. A single step to the left or right or slight change in camera height can make a massive difference. For instance, in this example, just one step to the left separated the foreground yellow leaves from a background tree trunk. That small movement changed the background trunks on either side into a natural frame for the yellow leaves, turning a random snapshot into a clear, intentional composition. It's one of those kind of compositions where the viewers can see, I can see what you did there. And tip number 6, actively look for reflective surfaces to create stunning reflections. Still water, be it a lake, a puddle, or even wet sand, can mirror the sky, clouds, and surrounding landscape, essentially doubling the visual impact of the scene. Reflections add symmetry, order, and often a surreal quality to your landscape photographs. When you actively look for it, you will be surprised by how easy it is to create reflections, like in this example from a small puddle next to a road, and in this example I used a puddle in some tractor tracks. The secret is simply just to get super low, just above the water. This will eliminate the often not so aesthetic mid-ground and make a stronger reflection. And if you want to up your reflection game, you can always break it with other elements such as birds or boats that are often themselves also reflected in the lake, or make a reflection a smaller part of your scene. Tip number 7 is basically just to align anything. Whatever you get the chance to align along obvious lines within your frame, and that's important to remember, along obvious lines within your frame always works and helps to create order. A rainbow with a sea stack or waterfall, a tree in the fog aligned with a background villa, the crescent moon above a line of cypress trees, a comet above a mill, birds above a boat, birds in the gap between two trees, tractor tracks on a field, a road with trees on either side and the dancing aurora above, a person with a waterfall, several craters in the Icelandic highlands, the Milky Way with Stonehenge, and so on and so forth. It doesn't really matter what you align for the sake of creating order in your photo. However, what you align is another matter and will influence the story of your photo. So composition tip number 8 is a tip for refining your work, and it is to blur your eyes to identify visual patterns and balance. While it can be a little bit hard to do in the field, it's something you can play around with in the curating phase and post-processing phase of your photography. By squinting, you strip away detail and order, revealing the core composition, masses, and tonal balance. This helps you confirm if your subjects are weighed correctly and if the photo has a solid, balanced structure. I cover much more about balance in my composition ebooks. What you can also do is to blur the photo with some Gaussian blur in Photoshop, and alternatively you can flip the photo on its head, also reducing it to unrecognizable and basic patterns. And if you want to learn much more about post-processing and editing your photos, be sure to get my big post-processing course, Photoshop for Landscape Photographers. If you're already using Lightroom, it's super easy to get started. I personally use Camera Raw, which is what Lightroom is built on, so the editing algorithms are completely the same. I do most of the work in Camera Raw, and then I bring it into Photoshop and use all sorts of different kind of masking. Everything from basic masking over blending layers and luminosity masking. I have built up the course so it's super easy to get started, introducing you to the different programs. Then I have a section all about what tools and how to use them and why in either the RAW module, that would be Lightroom, or Camera Raw, and Photoshop. And finally, I have like 11 start to finish tutorials where I edit a whole range of different photos that we landscape photographers can encounter in the field. There is a coupon code along with a link down in the description of this video. One of the main visions for us landscape photographers is to give a sense of awe and wonder and scale in our landscape photos. And the easiest way to show scale in a landscape photo is to add a person. So that's the 9th tip. This is an incredibly effective technique for conveying the true vastness of a landscape. A small human figure provides a known point of reference, instantly making mountains seem taller, valleys deeper, waterfalls bigger, and the scene more epic. Just be sure to place yourself or the person with the optimal relative distance between the camera and the landscape. You don't want the person to be so close that it has the opposite effect as in these examples, where my placement in the left-hand photo kinda makes the waterfall seem smaller, and in these examples where the person is so small you can hardly see them. Use the intervalometer of the camera to take the photo so you can easily step into the frame yourself and perfect the pose and placement. And the 10th and final tip is to use the power of negative space. Negative space is the empty or less detailed area surrounding your main subject. Think of a huge expanse of sky, calm water, or a foggy field. By deliberately giving your subject room to breathe, you draw more attention to it, simplify the composition, and invoke a feeling of tranquility, isolation, or grand scale. It's the negative space that often gives the photograph its power and its mood. But be careful, negative space can also make grand elements in your scene, like mountains, seem small, Or if used incorrectly, it can end up as dead space rather than negative space. So use negative space deliberately. My 2026 calendar is now also available, and if you want to learn much more, be sure to get my ebooks on composition and light, and if you struggle with post-processing, editing your photos, be sure to enroll in my big course for that. Everything is available via the links down in the description of this video, and if you haven't seen my newest videos from Iceland, they're super epic. Definitely check them out. You can see them right here.